Hello, good people. I'm as a representative for the group. I'm Kariputri Nadisari Harmaya. I would like to explain to you the competition model and language disorder. Well, let's start to introduction, the competition model and language disorder. To understand language disorder processing, we can observe from their language disorder struggle such as articulation, lexical, syntactic, structure, and other language function. To understand dynamic communication disorder, we need to articulate a processing model that explains in mechanistic terms how and why disorder processing differs from normal processing. Moreover, because communication abilities continue to develop throughout the lifespan, the model must also consider properties of language acquisition. And why use a processing model? Processing models is used to observe, underline the importance of a processing approach to communicative disorder. Why then would we suggest that research go beyond mapping particular competencies to specific disorder such as SLI or anatomical injuries as in aphasia? First, the evidence suggests that even specific damage can exert broad and varying effects on language functioning. The reverse is also true. Similar symptoms in language production and comprehension can be elicited from different types of damage. More fundamentally, it is a mistake to think that local areas operate in a simple and uniform way when involved with other areas on land. Neuroimaging with fMRI can underestimate the dynamic, real-time flexibility and complexity of the system. A processing approach, on the other hand, emphasizes the potential from system-wide devices to stem from varying or multiple causes. Moreover, as Cohen's analysis suggests, the specific symptoms of a language disorder will depend on how the linguistic processing network is configured. For example, because different languages are represented differently, we would expect noticeable different pattern or of impairment in different language. Okay, an introduction to the competition model. The competition model provides a processing account for both comprehension and production in order to map form to meaning during comprehension or meaning to form in production. A language user must use a set of cues specific to that language. Each of these cues has a certain validity or general usefulness of a cue in the input. More specifically, we can think of a cue validity in terms of the dimension of reliability and availability. The availability of the cue is the degree to which it is accessible in the input. The reliability of a cue is the probability with which a cue leads to correct usage or understanding. Well, here are the figures of the Unified model. In the Unified model, competition arises between alternatives within specific cortical maps. The relevant maps represent cortical areas that encode patterns across 6 areas language processing, such as audition, articulation, lexicon, syntax, perspective taking, and mental models. These maps are broadly tied to specific brain areas in the model, such as auditory cortex for audition and motor cortex for articulation. Here are the predictions of the model. How can a processing model add to the understanding of language disorders and treatment of patients diagnosed with disorder? Well, there are two main possibilities. The first is understanding the greater system-wide features of this disorder can increase our ability to predict patient behavior. Second, this increased predictive power can influence how treatment can be designed and evaluated. Research in communication disorders addresses three main theoretical questions. The first is to what degree can we characterize impairments as localized versus global, and the second are the problems encountered by patients exclusively linguistic, or are domain-generated cognitive processes also effective. And the third is how much of language is hardwired, that is genetical specified and available independent of experience and learning. Let us examine how the Unified model addresses each of these questions. Let's talk first about localized versus global impairment. According to Carl Livesey, proposed that all cognitive functioning is global. However, given what we know about the details of neural connectivity, it is difficult to deny that different neural areas have different functions. However, this functional differentiation does not invalidate the concept of global cognition. The competition model does not suggest there are no differences among different disorders. On the contrary, this discussion helps us understand the detailed functioning of chunking connectivity, maps, and resonance within the framework of the competition models. And the second is specific language impairment. The specific language impairment is a disorder that is defined by normal cognitive function combined with markedly poor performance on language tasks. SLI is a genetic disorder resulting in a phenotypically unified competence deficit. For example, SLI is centrally a failure to develop verb agreement, delaying competent synthetic production. Similarly, the GSLI model proposes that there is at least some subgroup of SLI patients whose essential deficit is in grammatical processing. More specifically, there must be impairment in grammar but not in word learning, phonology, or working memory. And specific language impairment and FOXP2 gene is uniquely for human. SLI is a genetic disorder resulting in phenotypically unified competence deficit. However, FOXP2 gene is uniquely human. In order to characterize SLI as a disorder with a single genetic cause, several inferences are needed. First, the argument requires an identifiable genetic source of the disorder. For example, in the Ka family, the disorder is linked to dominant mutation on the FOXP2 gene. Second, a large-scale study of 2,704-year-old language-impaired children from a general population sample of 18,000 children did not find the hypothesis of FOXP2 mutation in any participants. Therefore, there must be some alternative etiology that leads to language impairment beyond a simple mutation in FOXP2. Even if such a distinct subtype were identified, and even there were some statistical association between that disorder and some genetic mutation or set of mutation, we would still need a cognitive of neural model by which the mutation could be linked mechanistically to the disorder in question. Well, and the third question is, are SLI deficit domain specific? A prolonged process of competition in SLI lexical processing. Such data have connect a potential perceptual deficit with the accompanying processing impairment. The idea is that the specificity of this disorder implies that language learning and processing depend on a disparate linguistic module. rather than on dominant general processes, and that damage to the module causes highly specified symptoms as hypothesized in SLI. However, the comorbidity of non-linguistic task difficulties for children with SLI. This research done by Barry, Yasin, and Bishop in 2006. They calls this interpretation into question. The result is a prolonged process of competition is SLI lexical processing. Such data connect a potential perceptual deficit with the accompanying processing impairment, like I said before. Okay, next to the fourth question is SLI exclusively a deficit of linguistic competence? Well, according to Van der Lely and Christian in 2000, describe the difference between processing models and competent deficit models as the difference between whether or not impaired input process and processing capacity cause SLI. Within a competence deficit model, any negative effects that stem from SLI should be restricted to the linguistic domain and basic cognitive capacity, such as working memory, should remain within the normal range. More concerningly, these competence models of SLI predict that genetic changes cause domain-specific effects, and that those effects consist of competence deficits such as the extended optional infinitive stage. However, there is real variability in the symptoms and deficits showed by SLI children, and multiple cognitive limitations could be the source of these varied deficits. In the case of representative expressive SLI, then we would expect to see different, more general problem of information exchange between brain areas affecting connection between broca's area, DLPFC, Wernicke's area, and attentional areas generally. Okay, now we move to the aphasia. Aphasia here is a language disorder which has a clear etiology, and it is happened when brain lesion from trauma or stroke produce a linguistic impairment. So you will get aphasia disorder when you get something trouble in your brain. And traditionally, aphasia has been divided into three main categories. The first one is Broca's aphasia, the second one is Wernicke's aphasia, and the third is conduction types, like I mentioned before in the fourth question. Well, Broca's or non-fluent aphasia, it's called and then Wernicke's or fluent aphasia, and anomia or problem with word finding. Additionally, types include global and conduction aphasia. Because the etiology of aphasia is much clearer than that of SLI, and because the injuries are easier to map, aphasia provides a useful counterpoint to SLI. In SLI, the functional deficits are well defined, but etiology remains unclear in aphasia. The opposite is true. Talking about aphasia, in aphasia components account require that a specifically lesioned local area or module be the root cause of the aphasic disability. The competence, like according to Buchheimer in 2002, the competence approach fails to consider the broader context of the language system, wherein levels of processing such as semantics, syntax, lexicon, audition, and comprehension interact within a distributed functional neural network of brain areas. The actual pattern of aphasia relate not just to the processing in local maps, but also disorder in connectivity and processing that occurs as two or more maps attempt to work in synchrony. We have talking about the aphasia, and now how about the non-aphasic patient with left hemisphere lesion have sentence comprehension and free word recall deficit compared to the similar right hemisphere lesion patient. So the aphasia will be get confused in the word ordering rather than non-aphasic will be free word recall deficit compared to similar right hemisphere lesion patient. And the last is the conclusion. What we can conclude here that is the competition model can be useful in understanding SLI and aphasia. The competition model framework suggests that there are multiple pathways that can be produced for SLI. And the second is the current literature suggests that at the core of the SLI endophenotype is a set of individual variations that can influence the operation of urban working in memory. And the unified competition model is designed to interface with perceptual and memory processes and integrates working memory buffers at each level of processing. In this way, the model is aligned with cognitive models. Although the competition model emphasizes the structural integrity of language, it also emphasizes the complexity of neuro-linguistic processing. Although we expect a wide variety of lesion or endophenotypes that produce similar symptoms pattern, we also expect that careful scientific work can eventually spread out the relative contribution of the 6 disparate local processing regions and the complex patterns of wet matter connection between them. Okay, I think that's all about the material. If you still confused about my explanation, you can write down your comment below and I will answer it as soon as possible, and I will give you the clear explanation if you still confused. Okay, thank you so much. Bye bye.